So, Sean, welcome back. And since we last connected, much has happened. That's
Yeah,
all I can say. Much
everything
has
just keeps
happened.
on happening.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, really rapid changes. So yeah, so at the moment we're in the just the day after Kamala announced her VP pick. There had been all this speculation that it would be Shapiro, because it's in Pennsylvania, blah blah blah, and then there is the background thing about how apparently Shapiro was not as liked by the more more progressive side of the Democratic Party. That may or may not be true. I don't know. You probably have better information around that. But anyway, go ahead and tell us what your perception
So,
is.
so the Shapiro issue. So I even got some leaks that it was going to be Shapiro, and Shapiro made sense with Pennsylvania sitting there, and he won Pennsylvania handedly
Right.
as governor. Um, but I think what it was he had he was not backing the two-state solution in Israel,
Mm.
and which is kind of set Democratic policy right now. So they were worried that there would be protests and things and division and I mean and there probably would have been protests, to be honest. He is not liked a whole lot by the millennial universe of voter, based on polling. Um, Whereas and then you'd like Mark Kelly, who's a senator down his problem was that they don't want to pull a senator out of the Senate right now,
Right.
right? He's in there for 4 more years, and that's a great place for him to be because that was not a huge win by a large margin,
Mm.
and to not have to worry about that state for a few more years is a good thing
Mm.
as far as the Senate goes. So, also his stance on the border isn't exactly where the mainstream Democratic stance is. So, and I mean, quite honestly, I think the fact that he's in the Senate trumped everything. And Shapiro also had a few other random issues, nothing to do with him per se, but it was what was around him. So he had an office issue with some sexual harassment,
Mm.
and it didn't involve him. From my understanding, it didn't involve him. It was staff,
Mm.
but it probably wasn't handled, and that stuff's never handled well. For
Yeah.
one thing, you can't handle it well. Like if you do everything right, you're still not handling it well because you don't want it to happen in the first place.
Sure.
Um, so there was that problem. And honestly, the Republicans were already gearing up because they also thought it was Shapiro. When you've got Trump out there saying, "Oh, I'm glad it wasn't, they didn't pick Shapiro," blah blah blah. No, 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 no. They wanted Shapiro because they wanted to use Israel and the Middle East and all that stuff as a wedge issue
Mm.
and cut into uh, you know the minority votes in key areas like Michigan and Wisconsin, and so they wanted that to happen. So
Right.
what she did, which I think was pretty smart. So I actually did not know much about Waltz until I was on that phone call, White Dudes for Kamala, which was hilarious. And it was fun. It was just very informative. It was 3 hours long. I think they raised like $4 million or something. It was awesome. Um, but he was one of the speakers, and I never actually heard him like live speaking in that kind of format before. He hadn't really been in the news circuit that much. Just been as governor and doing his thing. And so he killed it. And I knew he wasn't running from a prompter. I knew he might have had notes maybe, but he talked for about 10 minutes, and he was my biggest surprise in the entire phone call. I was like, well, I honestly would, and I think I did a video on me being on that call and what that was about. But he was my biggest takeaway, you know,
Mm.
uh, after Mark Hamill was on there. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so that was a big deal. But but yeah, he was my biggest takeaway. I was like, wow, that guy killed it. I mean, and it was just I liked him flat
Mm.
out. He's only about 6 months older than Kamala too,
Mm.
so they're both in their late 50s, 60s, and
60. Yeah.
yeah, which puts them at the kind of that middle space between the silent and next generation.
Mm.
Uh, Yeah, so I think he's a good pick. He's a safe pick. You
Hmm.
know, he's Midwestern, and I think we talked about who she would have to pick. It couldn't be a West Coast. It was going to be either East or Midwest. And and uh and since, you know, the East is more or less on lock, the Midwest is where the battle's at. So she picked a guy who's got he's a two-term governor, uh great on family social issues, great on LGBTQ issues. He's won a state championship in football, so he's got the football vote. Um, he's uh, he's great on the gun issue, and he's a gun owner. And apparently, he won the Marksman Trophy every year he was in Congress. Like he beat out all the Republicans. They're all gun toting. He beat them all in you know, in sharpshooting. And I was like, wow. Oh, he's in the military for 24 years. They're going after him a little bit on that because I don't he never served in combat. And he retired after 24 years. And they're giving him because that's just before I guess his group deployed. Um, but I mean, he was in there for 24 years.
Yeah.
So I don't, you know, that's not going to be an argument that's going to get very far. Um, then but he's got, I mean, he just checks a veteran, of course, checks all the boxes. Teacher,
Teacher. Yeah.
and he's a history teacher, which is great because the one thing that the Republicans have no concept of at all is linear time, history, and how it works. Because they just make stuff up.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, I mean, if they've never met math that they weren't willing to manipulate.
Right.
So I like the pick. I think he's a safe pick, which is fine. It's nothing wrong with being safe.
Hmm.
Um, and the millennials like him, and they're the next largest voting bloc, if not the largest voting bloc in the country right now. So check, you
So,
know, done.
and that's in polling too, that millennials like Walz better
Well,
than.
right now, Kamala, I just saw a poll, I think that was this morning. She's 2 to 1 voters under 30.
Mhm.
So or under 35, sorry.
Under
So she's two
35.
to one against Trump on that.
Right.
So she's got all the girls. She's got everyone that Taylor Swift and Beyonce have told to go vote, and then she's got all their boyfriends, probably, and husbands.
Right.
I also think that Watts will do very well. I'm sorry, Waltz will do very well with will help with the you know, because honestly, the Republican Party is mostly made up of white males,
Mhm.
and I think I mean, he's just a straight up guy. I mean, I think he helps bridge that gap a little bit, which is fine. I mean, every point we get of white male vote in the Democratic Party complete is literally the votes that the Republican Party cannot survive without.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah. So is it your understanding that uh, I guess when Biden was on the scene, there were some voters that now, I mean, it must be
oh,
true. It must be true because just alone on the amount of those numbers on all the volunteers that started to come into the picture and so on, it must be true that there were some voters that were not showing up in the polls, or
it
that
was
were.
volunteers and money, I think, and also, I mean, she's up when compared to Trump on the economy. She's up in most states since the change, as compared to where Biden was. She's definitely up with younger voters than where Biden was. Uh, they and since she's started, they've raised over $300 million. They raised 10 million last night, just when they announced Waltz. They raised they're basically raising $1 million an hour
Right.
for like the 10 hours after that. So I mean, the money's coming in, which is key. Can't win a race without money. That doesn't matter what level you're on. Um, uh, but yeah, it's definitely got its own thing, and it's definitely all the numbers are going up. Everything is up since 2 weeks ago.
So,
Every quantifiable measurement.
does this, were you involved in when Obama in '08? So does this feel to you, because some of the pundits are saying the enthusiasm is very similar to when Obama entered the political arena,
Yeah,
especially when he
so
post Iowa and all that.
right. It's there's similarities and then there's differences. For one thing, Obama, we started working in his campaign in March of '07.
Mhm.
So it was an 18-month campaign. Um, so, by 90 days out, we'd already knocked on, and I'm just speaking for Dallas, we were over 200,000 doors by by at this point in the cycle. Um, so it's the fact that we started so much earlier, we got a lot more done, but the energy is definitely at that level, and the young people showing up, and people of every ethnicity showing up, um, is definitely Obama adjacent for sure. But it's the timeline, man. It's just they've literally done 6 months. We were joking at the beginning, but they've done 6 months worth of work in 2 weeks. No joke. Um, so it's kind of what they've been able to accomplish is pretty amazing. And but also you gotta understand when Obama ran in '08, we had Bush for 8 years, and we were in a never-ending war. I had many of my friends deployed over there in Iraq and Afghanistan. My generation fought that war pretty much. Because 9/11 happened, we were all in college or just out of college.
Mhm.
Um, so I mean, I was knocking on doors for congressional candidates that wanted to get us out of Iraq and Afghanistan back in '06. So I saw a lot of that energy moving over to '08, so there was definitely a movement that cycle. And in this cycle, I think because Trump is such an existential threat to our country and our democracy,
Mhm.
what we're seeing is that kind of energy as well. That's the catalyst for this. Whereas Bush for 8 years and all that nonsense was the catalyst for Obama. Trump and Project 2025, which I, by the way, have a 15-part series on my channel about, um, that's the catalyst for this. That's the existential threat of
Mhm.
4 more years of that nonsense. Like I mean, I truly don't believe our government would recover from Trump if if Trump got another 4 years. Plus, the people, I use that word loosely, that he's got around him, that are working on Project 2025. I've read all 930 pages. It is as a policy. My first job was actually a policy analyst out of college, before they had me working campaigns, and it's literally a nightmare of policy. It's like reading. It's like if Stephen King wrote policy, that would be Project 2025.
I mean, do you anticipate that they'll be focusing a lot on that? The top of the ticket, and the other Democrats is keep pointing out Project 2025 because Trump is, pretending like he doesn't know about it, even though the people that are writing it up. I mean, even isn't it true that J.D. Vance wrote the foreword to a book? I mean,
Yeah,
it's pretty well, it's out there. It's remarkable too how Republicans are super smart in one way and incredibly stupid in other ways because they give the game away. They just, they put it there for everyone to
but the,
see.
the only thing that the Republicans do that's smart, and it kind of makes me sad that this works, is they feed off people's fear.
Sure,
And that's
that's
not
true.
really being smart. That's like one of the oldest tricks in the book.
Right.
You would think a measurement of intelligence would be finding innovative ways. All they've done is taken new technologies and played out the exact same trope every cycle. It's they and them against us. And we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. That black and white nonsense is exactly that. And yeah, and so when we I don't. I've never actually met very, very intelligent Republican candidates. There are a few. Most of them are gone now.
Yeah,
The
right.
smart ones left
They left.
because
Yeah.
they're smart. They
Yeah.
didn't want their grandchildren to read in a history book that they were standing next to Donald Trump.
Right. Yeah, it makes
Because
sense.
they have presence of mind and understand history. And I mean, how many? It's just yeah. It blows my mind that they've been as successful as they are. And most of it has to do with gerrymandering and the electoral college. Like there are very few Republican presidents that have actually won by the popular vote as a non-incumbent.
Right.
Reagan,
Yeah,
Bush won,
he
but
won one.
he did
Close,
it
though. It was
the
close.
second term. He won the popular vote, not the first term,
Right,
obviously, with all the whole Gore in Florida and everything. So, and Trump certainly didn't win the popular vote. He lost the popular vote by a couple million votes. So if it weren't for the Electoral College and gerrymandering, there'd be no Republican Party in this country. Gerrymandering alone gives them at least 30, 40 more seats in Congress than they would have otherwise.
right,
That's not a party. That's minority rule over a majority. And that's why that's part of the energy I think we're seeing in this cycle. The fact that Democrats have to overperform by 2% nationally to win.
right,
Republicans just need to get 48. We have to get 52 to win.
right.
That's not a democracy.
No, that's true.
It's 50 plus one. That's
Right.
a democracy.
So, how do you see now, based on that, since the election is decided in the 7 or 8 states, like, the Nevada, Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina. Uh, so, how do you see well, you say the change with Kamala? How do you see all that developing, if at all? I mean,
So
it may not be easy to see, too. It may be
no,
something that we.
it's there in the math if you look for it. So what I did was I went back and grabbed the census data for all the swing states, and I did a video on my channel just looking at the demographics of the swing states. And what I'm looking for is so the way normal demography worked before the Industrial Revolution was there's a pyramid. So lots of young people at the bottom, and as you get older, just attrition, people die. So fewer and fewer, like fewer 90-year-olds, and then 80-year-olds and so forth. So you get to a point. Well, because of the Industrial Revolution, fewer people, we're not having 11 kids anymore, right? Because on a farm, 11 kids is worth something.
Right.
That's your crew. That keeps the farm going.
Yeah.
Plus, healthcare was garbage back then. So, you know, people died. People got, sucked into a tractor. I mean, stuff happened. So if you had 11 kids, you could lose a few and you still got enough. Whereas then when we moved into the states and in the cities and suburbs, kids are crazy expensive.
Right.
I have two. They're insanely expensive. And so people are having one, maybe two. Two just replaces you and your partner. Uh, One doesn't even do that. Most people are having like 1.23%,
Right.
so it's not even so when you look at the demography, there's still that point at the top because people do die. But it goes out, and that's the boomers, and that's the 60, 70-year-olds, and then it comes in, that's my generation, that's the X gen, and then it goes out again, like kind of like a pair. That generation right there, that 30 something generation, is the millennials. And in a lot of those states, they're either tied or exceed the number of boomers. And this is really the first presidential cycle where that line exceeds the boomer line, which is up here in the 60s and 70s. So that's the stuff that I look at when I look at these swing states. I'm like, and you see Kamala polling 2 or 3 to 1 against Trump and with young voters, and the fact you have Roe, which directly affects young people, right? Dobbs and all that. So you end up with a real demographic 1-2 punch to the GOP. That's the stuff I'm looking for. And when you've got, Taylor Swift on her Twitter saying everyone get registered to vote, and I'm voting for Kamala. She's got a few million people that she communicates with like that.
Right.
That's more than most news networks.
So,
And
so,
they're all under the age of 40.
so is it though? But am I wrong in uh, uh, analyzing it as there are more? So Kamala's winning really big with that group, but isn't it true that that group is still a smaller voting bloc than the Boomers in terms of the
Well,
numbers
so it
numbers
depends
of
on,
votes?
yeah, so that used to be the case. I have a couple of counties here in Texas that I watch, and I have friends who have access to the voter reg, and they'll just give me the file. And what I'll do is I'll compile it by age. And what I've been noticing the last couple of years, and definitely 2 years ago, I saw a giant uptick in women under the age of 35 registering to vote. I mean, they're out registering the men. I mean, they're in Bell County. At one point it was like 5-1. So, and on my channel, I actually talk about how when votes move from Republican, Democrat, and Independent, and what that looks like for math. You've got a lot of Republican women who are not going to vote for Trump. So if they just stay home, that's a +1 to the Democrats. If they move over, it turns into a +3. Well, it's a +2 for Democrats if they don't vote. It's a +3 for Democrats if they do vote for Kamala, because it's a vote that the Republicans were counting on, and now it's a vote that they got to go replace twice.
Right.
So it's a real kick in the you know wheres, because I think the GOP, and also it's something that's really difficult to poll for. Also, because of this thing,
Mhm.
polling is kind of I honestly look at trends. I don't look at actual polling data numbers. I'll do like, grab all the polls and just see if they're going up or down, and
Mhm.
just see where that is. Because anything before Labor Day is not not exactly the most accurate. In fact, polls get much more accurate after Labor Day than they are
After
before,
Labor Day,
because people are paying attention.
to pay more attention. Right, right, right. So, you seem to be saying that the trend is so that we should see polls as we go into Labor Day and beyond that reflect at least some lead, but with the possibility that it might even be worse for the Republicans than what the lead is showing, given that you can't really poll accurately
The
for
younger people tend to filter harder. Also, independents don't take polls. And the reason in 22 there wasn't a big red wave, they were talking about the big red waves coming. The reason there wasn't a big red wave in 22 is because the independents they don't poll, they don't answer polls. They also don't participate in primaries, but they've pretty much always chosen who is going to be president in this country.
Mhm.
Uh, they went 4-1 Democrat in 22. And independents are independent for a reason. They believe in the autonomy of the human body. Independent voters usually are the ones that always vote for legalization of marijuana, decriminalization of all sorts of things. And it's because you're the government. You're not there to tell me what to do. I don't trust any of these parties. So now the government's saying that if a woman wants to control her own body, whether it be for healthcare or reproductive rights, you're saying she can't. That's a no winner with independent voters. It's a zero for them. So I think that now that we know what their real game plan is, because Project 2025 outline exactly how they want to make it illegal. So right now is like, I think I heard like 30% of all abortions are pills that come through the mail. Well, they're gonna use they're gonna use laws from the 1835 that are going to go in and make it illegal to send that stuff in the mail. So so we already know what they're going to do because they've told us. It's like playing poker with a moron that shows you his cards. So the independents know that. Also, the independents read a lot, and they know they don't trust anybody, and they definitely aren't with the Republicans right now. Yeah, they think the Democrats are all a bunch of liberal, you know, rainbow chasing, yada yada, whatever. But if it's, you know, removing the rights of my children or free lunch for kids that don't have any money at school, they're going to go with the candidate that's like, oh yeah, feed the kids. It's
So
like,
then, okay, so then why are you saying that? Because there are polls, I mean, you see this a lot where they'll say, this is Democrats, this is Republicans, this is Independents. So you're saying that that's probably undersampled or that you really can't
oh,
trust.
I think, well, in fact, a lot of the media have come out saying they've been undersampling Democrats because, well, the Republicans feel like they have to, because they feel like their candidate's under attack. They're more likely to defend their candidate, whereas somebody might not take a poll because Kamala doesn't need to be defended. She
Mhm.
hasn't broken any laws. She's not indicted or, I mean, she's not in like four different court cases right now. And the only reason that he's not in jail is because of judges he appointed. That's not a thing for Kamala. That's a Trump thing. They have to defend Trump, you know? Plus, no one wants to be a sucker. No one wants to know they've been conned, right? So they have a vested interest to maintain the narrative that they're not being conned. So they're more likely to go out there and say Trump, 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 and answer the phone. And, oh, it's a poll. Trump, 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 Trump. Whereas a Democrat might go, oh, it's a poll. I'm not gonna answer that stuff. I got work to do. You know, I mean, it's not. There's not this. It's a different kind of energy. They're playing defense with these polls, and the Democrats are offense, and they're too busy running the ball down the field to worry about the other stuff. That's
So
my feeling.
would you say that, so based on that though, would you say that when you look at the map and the states that are said to be critical, the so-called battlegrounds, do you see it as like, yes, the Democrats could win them all and even extend beyond that? Or do you feel like it's more about they'll just get Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania and eke it out because that's the maximum given the current scenario? Or is that something that you really can't tell until you see a little more data?
Well, more data is always helpful.
Yeah, sure.
But what I do is I kind of look, there's a lot of data out there. Like, for example, in Virginia, their state races are on odd years. So I was actually up there in November working on some state house seats that were in the hardcore suburbs of Virginia, districts that they hadn't won in forever, right? And for the state house. And we concentrated on 5 of these districts, and we won 4 of the 5. Um, and if you watch all the commercials, it was all Dobbs, 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 row, row, row. That's the issue. So this is why I always remind people like about Texas. So it's really 20%, 21 or 20.5% Republican, and then 19% Democrat. And then 60% don't vote. So I call that the apathy vote. So if you had 2 or 3% of that apathy vote, so the apathy vote goes down to 57% instead of 60. Just 2 or 3% of those have a reason to go and vote Democrat. The entire Republican Party is destroyed.
So
Their
you
their entire their entire electoral anchor is Texas.
right. So are you actually do you actually feel, I mean, you're there. Do you actually feel that Texas could be in play, or do you feel like we
It's
might?
it's an allocation of resources. The problem is this, and I actually have a video about I'm about to, in a couple days, I've got a video about what it would take to turn Texas blue. It's a matter of resources. Like the amount of money it would take to turn Texas blue if spent properly. And I mean like $40 million on the field program, probably not $100 million just in media buys. Keep in mind the media market in Texas is insanely expensive. Um, but if you were able to spend $200 million, you could totally turn Texas blue. Or you could spend that same amount of money and like pick up 6 Senate seats in 6 different states.
Right.
So the problem is justifying spending all of that money to win a Senate seat and some congressional seats in a heavily gerrymandered district where you probably wouldn't be able to hold on to those congressional seats for more than one cycle. You'd at least have the Senate seat for 6 years.
Right. Right.
It's hard to justify.
Mm,
So it's really just a matter of resources. Yes, we have the population, the demography, and everything. But you also have to remember Houston has more voters than most states, and that's just Houston.
right. Right. So the cities carry a lot of weight
Oh, the cities are the weight.
on the blue side. So then, but what about, for example, a thought I had is that in Florida, I believe they have isn't it on election night? They're voting on Dobbs. They're voting on abortion rights.
Yeah.
So does that mean that puts the state potentially in play, or would people do the thing of voting for that but voting for a Republican?
No, though anyone who's showing up to vote for that or vote against that, well, if they're going to vote against that, they're voting Republican. If they're voting for that, they're voting Democrat. And because it tends to be that people are more likely to vote for rights as opposed to against their own rights, you're going to get, and just as a selfish measure, people want more, period. of everything.
Right.
They want more rights. They don't want less rights. That's why we've got what 18% approval rate of the Supreme Court, because they're literally taking rights away from people, as opposed to what they've been doing for the last 100 years is giving rights to people. So anytime you take away something, yeah, your marketability goes down. So yeah, having the abortion issue on the ballot in Florida absolutely puts Florida in play, 100%.
See, my thought was that if on election night Florida goes blue, it's over.
But then that's game over.
It's
Yeah.
over. There's no, because
Yeah.
that would be a signal that everything else
Oh yeah. I
is
mean, Georgia's done. That means that when Virginia, North Carolina, yeah. I mean, and also like if Ohio goes blue, and it totally could. I mean, there's more than enough women that are registered to vote there, and then yeah, I mean, there's lots of possibilities out there. Roe has not been on the ballot. When Roe was on the ballot, we were still putting men on the moon.
right in the 1960s,
In 70s, yeah.
70s.
Mhm.
But how, so is it, when you think that Dobbs happened pre the 2022 vote,
It did.
then,
It did. Yeah.
right, so what's the explanation for why, for instance, the Republicans still won the House? I mean, shouldn't there have been more
Well, it's
outrage?
for gerrymandering. The gerrymandering's the reason.
Gerrymandering.
Yeah, they
Right.
get 30, 40 seats for free just because of gerrymandering.
Gerrymandering.
So, so if they won 2 or 3 seats, that means they probably, if you had nonpartisan districts drawn across the country, which is something I super think needs to happen, um, they would, Democrats would have had like a 43, 44 vote majority in the House. Imagine what we could have gotten done.
Yeah, no, for
If
sure.
not for minority rule in our country, which is what
Yep.
we have.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the thing is, though, that, I mean, when people think about correcting a problem, whether it's the Supreme Court, gerrymandering, you need, by the standard, power, unless you kill the filibuster and ram it through, and
Well, that's fine because
then,
the Republicans have no problem killing the filibuster anytime it suits them. That's the thing. Harry Reid thought that Mitch McConnell was going to operate by the same rules that Harry Reid operated by when Obama was getting his appointments, right, for the Supreme Court, when they stole those judicial seats from him, those
right,
2 judicial seats they stole. Uh, they thought that Harry Reid thought, of course, Mitch McConnell, I've known him forever. We've been friends forever. Me, McCain, him, all those guys, they've known each other literally for decades. And he thought Mitch McConnell was going to run by the same rules as they've always run by.
right.
Obama had more judicial appointments tossed than if you added up every other judicial appointment that ever been tossed for every president before him together. Obama had more.
Right. Yeah. Well, I
So
mean,
the GOP does not play by any rules. And I mean, and look at their candidate. He literally tried to steal an election. This is not a party that plays by rules. So the Democrats saying they're going, oh, we can't get rid of the filibuster. That stuff blows my mind because the Republicans will absolutely get rid of that. Like Project 2025 specifically says, get rid of that. If we control both houses, if the Senate, get rid of that, pass this.
I mean,
Boom, boom, boom.
I know, because I mean, for now I'll consider it a fantasy, but I've thought the situation is so outrageous that, take for instance women's rights, and then from there, that's a basic one where I would say, I'm killing the filibuster and I'm giving it to them and I'm daring you to come in with your filibuster later to try to take them away. Or, for instance, I don't know if you need an actual constitutional amendment, but to say that the district should be fair for everyone, which means you represent everyone at the same time, that's another thing that seems preposterous to think, well, I have to wait until I get 60 votes or to even fix the Supreme Court, because now what
You
solution do
never
you
will
have?
have 60 votes. You
Well,
never will.
and you'd have to put in, to fix the Supreme Court, you'd have to put in 4 judges.
I have no
Right?
problem with that. Expanding the court to 13 just seems we have 13 districts anyway, makes perfect sense. We've
Sure,
expanded the court many times and no problems. I would
right,
have no
but would they
problem
do
with
it
that.
though? Would they actually do it?
Oh yeah, and then they can, and it's all Congress, and yeah, it's all just Congress. Congress can
Yeah,
absolutely do it. You don't even need an amendment or anything. They just pass a law. Boom. That's how many seats are in the Supreme Court now.
Right, right. But then doesn't that mean if the Republicans get elected again, they can just add another four if they feel like it too, right? Couldn't they do that?
So sure could.
Yeah, but I mean that'd be the logic. I mean, it's the logic of it's the question of, as you say, if both sides were fair, it always feels like Republicans are completely unfair and and Democrats are trying to be fair in order to bring them around, and they never come around. So we're always talking about the same thing, right? It's
Right,
like a
right, right.
nebulous.
I'm honestly, I'm like, just do it.
Yeah,
And then, oh no, they're gonna do bad things. They're gonna do bad things anyway. They're gonna cheat anyway. So this mindset that the Democrats have where, oh, we can't do that. We can't touch the big red button because then the Republicans are pounding that red button every chance they get. And they're not concerned at all. They
right,
weren't concerned at all by stealing judicial seats from
right,
Obama.
right.
Not at all.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
so I mean I'm sorry. They see the other side has no more credibility left. That's the problem. You can normally you'd be able to work with, but they have to have credibility, and they have none. They've given it all up and tossed it all away for power. Citizens United was the beginning of that. And then the money flowed in, and then ever since then, boom, 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 boom.
So does it feel to you like uh, the situation is on track for the presidency and the two houses of Congress? Does it feel like that?
Yep. So it feels like to me. I mean, the only reason we're not going to take the House if we don't, it's because of gerrymandering. But if you're talking about people voting, yeah, the American people, absolutely. Democratic Congress, Democratic Senate. I'm sorry, Democratic House, Democratic Senate, no problem. Problem is gerrymandering,
So, but that see that's
non-democratic power grab by elected officials who do not have the best interest of the country in their minds.
yeah. Well, so I mean, the problem is right now we have to do it through the gerrymandering. So,
Mhm.
I mean, still feels to me like
So just to give you an idea, the Democrats have to overperform in congressional races nationally as an aggregate 8.5%
well,
in order to have the majority in the House.
right.
Right?
Yeah, it makes it really hard. Yeah, yeah,
Makes
yeah.
it really hard.
Absolutely.
We
Yeah,
did
I
it
mean
in
that's
'08.
like that's the thing that you can't the way the map appears to me is that any win, forget about 60 votes. So then you are looking at, even if you had everything, you have to be taking measures that the other side will say, oh, you're doing this without our
Power grab.
approval.
It's a power
It's
grab.
a power grab.
Be
Yeah,
like, yep,
yeah,
absolutely, it's a power grab. Uh-huh, for sure. We're taking
right.
it back. We're not packing the court. We're unpacking the court. You pack the court.
No, it's
Now
true.
we have to unpack it.
Yeah, yeah. The
That's
question would
it. No,
be,
I don't buy this whole you're grabbing. No, they literally tried to overthrow the election. I'm done with them. They have no
yeah,
credibility left. Period.
yeah. No, I 100% agree. It'll be a question of, we know, for instance, that Biden was reluctant to make these big moves. One wonders if Kamala is different, being from a different generation, or I mean, I don't know, because people said how Biden really was the master of the Senate and all that. He just didn't want to, do something that intense.
Biden figured out that what Harry Reid didn't, but he figured it out late. Harry Reid never figured out that Mitch McConnell wasn't going to play by the same rules that he did. He never figured it out until he left. I mean, he probably still doesn't think that. I like Harry Reid. I've met him. He's a really nice guy. Comes to about here on me. He's not a very tall guy, but he's cool. I like him. But he also got completely and totally snowed by Mitch McConnell and the Republican Party, and they took him to task. And I think Biden has figured out that the same, but he also isn't in the Senate anymore. You know, um, but I think I know Kamala is not under any delusions that the Republicans are going to play fair.
Right.
So that makes me feel better. That makes me want to vote for her more.
Yeah, that the odds improve. Yeah, yeah. So is the summary message that people should, people, particularly almost everyone watching this, I think, is blue. You'll get the odd person in there that isn't, but most people are blue. So is your advice is just relax about the situation because,
Wouldn't relax. I definitely wouldn't relax till November, till the end, till the election's over. I think everyone needs to go out and knock on the doors, talk to their neighbors, go with a group of friends to go vote, and then go out to dinner or lunch. Vote early. Uh, Make sure your voter registration is up to date. That's going to be key because the Republicans are already trying to purge voter regs because that's how they play.
mhm.
Um, that's just I would not relax.
Well,
Not one.
I meant it. I meant it in the sense of psychologically relaxing around the fact that now we're probably in a better place than we were a month ago,
Oh, I think
and
so. Well, the
and
math, all the polling says that for sure. Yeah.
and then do everything possible to make sure your vote counts and whoever else you can influence in the same direction, right? That's the
Right.
that's the logic. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's good. That's good. That yeah, you're right. Though, I mean, what do you say about this thing that you start to hear? Trump is famous at this. As soon as he notices that the battlefield is changing and he's likely to lose, then he starts talking about how the whole thing is rigged, and you start to hear more about this business of counties refusing to certify. When I ponder that, though, it doesn't seem to me to be a very workable solution, even if they
What's going
all
to
en
happen
masse.
is there's going to be a few in there that are going to do something like that. What's fascinating is the Supreme Court gave the president incredible amounts of power to do official acts to certify votes. They
Oh,
gave
I
that
see.
to Biden, and they're going to give it to Kamala when she wins. And so my feeling is that it'll work itself out. It will be a bunch of noise. There will be all of these conspiracy theories and all of this, oh, the machine, blah, blah, blah. It's not a machine. Trust me, it's not that organized. I wish we were organized enough to have a conspiracy. We're not, flat out, I guarantee you. Um, Definitely not organized enough. We're happy if we can just get the vote out. That's the level, that's the peak level of organizing that we can hope for is get the vote out. And all this other stuff about, oh, they've hacked the machines and blah, blah, blah. That's not a thing.
Yeah, but don't you know that Republicans think that getting the vote out is a conspiracy? That's the whole
Then don't
point.
vote. GOP, by all means, don't vote. Go, please don't vote.
Yeah, no, what I meant in the sense that they're always eyeing the Democratic machine. It always produces more
No, I
votes.
think
So,
Trump should go out there and protest the vote. Absolutely. That would be awesome. He's already told them not to a couple times. And then he had to come back. Well, I didn't really mean don't vote. I meant, just, you know, don't listen to me. I don't know what he says. But yeah, no, I'd love for there to be a bunch of Republicans that would go out there and just, start saying, oh, the voting system's corrupt. Don't vote. Please go do that. They're
yeah,
morons.
yeah. Do
I
you
mean,
see? Does it make sense to you that what he's doing in Georgia is probably making Georgia more in play for Democrats as well? This thing of
absolutely.
attacking the governor and all that.
Oh yeah. And you know what? We just need people to not just stay home.
Right,
They don't have to vote Democrat. They just have to, or they'll go in and not vote, for Trump. Fine with me.
right.
Yeah, they'll vote down ballot. That's okay. That's their prerogative. They don't want to vote for Trump. They don't have to vote for Trump. He
Yeah,
won't
no,
be
right.
around
Because
after this cycle anyway.
yeah, as you said, that it becomes a double loss because
Right.
it's a right, right, right. And by the way, what is the mechanism? Because this is brought up quite a bit as well. The fact that he made that pick with JD Vance, and then people say, oh, he might replace him and so on. That's not even really that doable, right?
Say again. Sorry, what?
The once Trump made the pick, uh, immediately, people found all the problems with JD Vance, and then there's this constant taunting, and then there
Well,
are some
today's the
rumors.
deadline. Well, assuming that this plays on the 7th, today's the deadline.
You can't do it after now. By
That's
what?
why that's why Kamala had to do 6 months worth of work in 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's by
Today
law.
is technically the deadline. Yeah.
So basically, he's stuck with the guy.
Oh yeah.
Right, right,
Also,
right.
Trump doesn't make mistakes. He only has the best people. So if he goes back, he's like, "Oh, I made a mistake."
Only the best
Not his,
people. Yeah.
that's not his style.
No, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, that's one of the good things about Trump. He's very predictable. Everyone's like, "Oh, you never know what he's going to do." I'm like, "No, I know exactly what he's going to do.
Yeah.
Every freaking day, I know exactly what he's going to do because he's so ego driven that
Yeah,
it makes him massively predictable. Now,
that's true.
it may be nothing that a normal candidate would do. That's cool, but that doesn't mean he's not predictable. He's very predictable.
Right,
Like
right,
I
right.
knew exactly how he was going to attack Kamala the second that I realized that Biden was endorsing her and this was how it was going to go. I knew exactly how I was going to do it because he's a one trick pony. It's race and sexism. Those are his only two real hammers. He's
Right.
going to talk policy? No.
No, he's not. But see, that's the thing. This is where, for all the hand wringing that sometimes Democrats engage in, this year is the worst year to do that because of Dobbs, right? If you
Oh yeah, no.
women are really really pitched and they're trying, I need to do this, and now if you insult a woman, you're more likely to lose votes, and
You're going to get more votes for that woman that you've insulted, you
right,
know? Um uh so body autonomy is liberty.
right.
That's in the mind of every independent voter right now. Body autonomy is liberty. Independent voters believe in liberty more than democracy.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense, and I'll have to any place that I could go. Any suggestions to, if any, if it's even possible, to uh, study the independent vote in a way that where you would see.
538's got some stuff. Their website's pretty good. They do a lot of they take all the polls and kind of put them all together in one place.
Mhm.
Um, but they're probably where I generally go. But also the independent vote's so hard to poll. You don't even know if they're really an independent voter. Technically, since you're doing it on the phone, you don't even know you're talking to the right voter. They could be lying. People lie a lot on polls. Now, that's why you make a huge big sample size, so that way it kind of washes out
Watches it out.
any weird, anomaly get kind of washed out in the math. So they spread them out so much that they no longer impact the actual verdict. Um, that's why actually I like door knocking and canvassing because when they look at their little app, it's going to tell them that they're looking for a male that's 56 years old. So if a 33-year-old male walks up and says, "No, I'm this guy," you'd be like, "No, you're not."
Right, 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 right,
Whereas on a phone, you can't do that.
right, 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 right. So that's where you were saying that you get a much better sense of where a state is by what's
Knocking on doors. Absolutely,
knocking on
100%.
doors, right? So then, and are you saying then that so you're in Texas and you can tell from your knocking on doors and the numbers you're seeing that there's that deficit that Texas is under. Like right now, it would be a few
Well, the problem
points.
is no one's got a very large. I mean, there are some paid field programs happening right now in the state. I'm not involved with any of them right now,
Mhm.
um, but they're not the size that would be necessary. I'm not. I mean, they're like a couple $1 million, which sounds like a lot of money. It's about a tenth or maybe a fifth of the amount of money for a field program that would be required. They're operating in maybe 4 to 8 counties. The number's 19. You can be in 19 counties. So, like I said, Texas is a problem of allocated resources.
Right,
Once you've got a group of individuals willing to put the money up that are able to hire the personnel, which to run I mean, you would need to hire almost 1,200 canvassers in Texas. The logistics, the administrative power that you would need to build to manage that uh, is huge, and you have to do it in weeks.
right,
You know, so having the people that know how to organize like that, I'm one. I work with a few others, but most of them are working right now. They're already hired. They're doing other things.
mm,
And to do the 4 million doors I think it would take, you have to start back in March.
right, 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 right.
Also, you have weather issues. It's 106 degrees today in
Yeah,
Dallas.
you're baked to death. I
You
know.
only if you do have paid canvassers, they're going to go out for 4 hours and come right back in. You won't get 8 hours per canvasser, not in this weather.
Right,
So whereas you would normally need 30 canvassers, you now need 60 because you have 30 that will go out for 4 hours and 30 will go out for 4 hours. Can't be the same canvasser. So there's that kind of logistics involved. And like in May and April and May in Texas is when most of the rain that lands in Texas lands in Texas. So you've got 2 months there where you're going to have whole weeks where You can't send people out canvassing in the rain. You know, they look like crazy people. So
So
there's
is
a
it?
bunch of logistics involved, and that's why you have to start in March. And I've just not seen any organization or group willing to do that.
Right, it makes sense. And is it possible for you to say, it's probably just a wild question, but do you feel like someone like Ted Cruz is vulnerable in this cycle?
Oh, Republicans don't even like Ted Cruz. Yeah, this would be the cycle you would want to drop the amount of money I'm talking about and start canvassing back in March. This is that cycle. Uh, because not even Republicans like Ted Cruz. And like I said, if you can just get 2 or 3% of that apathy party to show up, Ted Cruz is gone.
Yeah,
Period.
but you feel like in the current environment, he's probably still too strong to
I
take
think
him
in the
out.
current environment, there is a certain amount of money that would remove him from office in Texas.
Right,
And that I have not seen that amount of money yet.
right. We'll have to see. Maybe if everything is going really well in other places.
Well, the problem is your most finite resource in campaigning is time and 90 days. You
Right.
know,
So
you
it's
could
all going to
probably
be.
do in 90 days with a decent sized program, you could probably knock on 250,000 doors in a given county and suburb. But that would be like that'd be like sneezing in a hurricane in Harris County. You got 2.4 million registered voters. That turns into like somewhere like 1.8 million doors.
Yeah, it's a lot
And
of
then
doors.
you remove their apartment complexes, you're still over a million doors. So if you went in there with 250,000 doors,
Not enough.
not
It's not
enough.
going to work. No.
You, that
And yet,
you'd have
but
to hit those doors 4 times. So you're looking at really only knocking on 50, 60,000 doors. So it's just not enough.
and the thing is, though, that he was already, I think, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't he? Didn't he enter this term in 2018? So he's up now, right? I think
It's
he's
Ted Cruz's cycle, yeah.
right. So then he didn't win by a lot. It was pretty,
So in most states, uh, Beto lost by 350,000 votes. Now, in most states, they'd be like, "Oh my God, that's a landslide." In Texas, that's a cold season. It's nothing. We have millions and millions of voters in this state, so it's not even a thing. Um, but it's enough. Basically, the best way to look at it, and that was the best way to look, and that was an off cycle. So that was a non-presidential cycle. Remember, Beto ran in that cycle, and then he ran for president. Like
mm, mm,
18 months later, he was running for president. So that was an off cycle. He lost by 350,000. So this cycle is an on presidential cycle. So you're going to have twice as many voters. That makes it harder to win.
oh, it does.
Um, yeah, because it's more voters. So that's more doors. So that's more money. So it's just more, 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 more. And
Ah,
that's why it's just insanely expensive to run stuff in Texas. You got geography and population all hurting you.
right.
Whereas in New York, you've got not the same population as Texas, but I mean, they're like the third or fourth largest state in the country. So they're big population wise, but their districts are like the size of our state house districts. They're so cute and they're tiny.
Hmm.
Whereas our districts are bigger than some states.
Right, right.
Right. I mean,
It's hard to dislodge someone that is once they enter, it's hard to dislodge those voters.
oh, absolutely. Well, it's the problem is gerrymandering. It's the candidates picking the voters, not the voters picking the candidates.
Right. Yeah, which
That's
makes sense.
that's the gerrymandering is the only problem we have in this country because it fixes all the other problems. The fact that everyone's like, "Oh, we're it's 50-50. This country's 50." It's not 50-50.
No.
It's 65-35, but that 35 is such an electoral advantage that I mean the Republicans in the Senate right now, they're 50 senators in the Senate right now, those Republicans represent like 37% of the population of the country.
Yeah, yeah, it's totally
It's all
unfair.
that I mean, how many people do you think live in Mississippi? More people live in Harris County than live in Mississippi.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I was saying earlier that ramming through legislation to just make it fair and let the chips fall where they
Honestly, you
may.
can't do anything about the Senate, but what you can do is fix the gerrymandering in the congressional districts, and that will fix the Senate. So you can understand. So the more viable seats that you have, the more money will be poured in, and the more votes you're going to get out. So the problem is we just don't have that many viable seats because of gerrymandering. If there were more viable seats, then you would have more money going in, have better operations, better GOTV, and you would actually see that trickle up the ballot. And that's why.
But okay, I'm not getting that. Senate is statewide, right? So the whole, okay, so,
to a state. Yep.
right, so isn't it more that what you're doing when you're fixing the gerrymandering is for the House?
Yeah.
How
But it
does
will
it,
trickle up because so what
oh,
will
I
happen
see.
is, yeah, we've got Democrats in rural and different parts of the state that don't even bother to vote because they know their vote doesn't matter, and they're not wrong.
Right, right. They just throw it in there, but it doesn't count for anything.
I mean, if you gave them a reason to vote, there'd be even more voters. But right now, if they go in there, they're just praying they get the least crazy Board of Education person, least crazy state house rep.
Louis Gomez.
In Texas, the primary in March is the general election because of gerrymandering.
Right, yeah, which
Yeah.
which is really the focus is on the House, but then it affects the Senate, right? By
Mhm.
by osmosis almost.
Absolutely. And it's the
Right,
state level too. The state house draws those lines. So, yeah.
right, right, right. All right. Well, I guess we've talked a lot today. We'll leave it there for now. But if you are up for it, let's meet again
Oh,
soon.
absolutely, Andre. Well, we should do this every couple. I think we're really good about doing it every couple weeks. And Lord knows there's going to be plenty of stuff to talk about. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I'm up for it, sure. So let's meet in a couple of weeks because a couple of weeks will put us right at the convention too, pretty
oh,
much.
yeah, the 18th is the convention. We can do a post convention. That'd be fun.
Okay. Sounds
Yeah.
great, man. All
So,
right.
just real quick, CLSB Politics is my page. Put them a little shout out.
Yes,
Uh,
I'll put all your information for everyone watching. It'll be in the description of the video, so you can go to Sean's channel and check it out, everything that he's doing,
appreciate it.
because it's very interesting. All right, we'll say goodbye to everyone. Bye for now.
Later, guys.